Hello, everybody. So tonight we have a guest appearance from Miss Stella. So this is my female dog. She is 9 years old. She'll be 9 this year. And she's a kind of corso. And she's the one, if you've seen my other videos where I talk about her being she is my biatch in the house. So she would like to be in charge of the whole show, but I will not let her. And we adopted her when she was 6 weeks old, and she is a troublemaker. So we knew right away what kind of dog she was personality-wise, and realized that I would have to keep her because we couldn't adopt her out. She would be too difficult for a family to deal with. And we have wrestle time going on, of course, as soon as I start my live with Seamus and Argos. Seamus. Seamus. Come here. Seamus. Come here. Good boy. So, here's the monster making all the noise. And Argos is going to steal the show, too. Okay, so tonight's questions. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. So tonight's questions, I have 2 of them. One comes from Millie in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And she adopted a 3-year-old Lhasa Apso. And let me look here what she said. She's having accidents in the house, even though they walk her a few times a day. And she recently started chewing on her baby's toys. So she wants to know what to do about that. Now, from what it sounds like, the dog was just recently adopted, because she said it took, this happened within about 10 days. So what happens is when you are rescuing a dog, what most people don't realize is that the personality of the dog when you first rescue them is not necessarily their true personality. So when we date somebody new, what we tend to find is that, I'm going to interrupt the wrestle game over here. When we date someone new, what we tend to find is that we are on our best behavior in the beginning. So when you start dating someone that is, when it's new and exciting in the relationship, we usually don't share all of our bad habits and tell them all the bad things that we do in our personality. We wait a while until we're comfortable and we're sure we've got them convinced that we're pretty cool. Then we'll slowly start introducing our quirks and bad habits. And rescue dogs are the same way. A lot of times they are, some of them can be shell-shocked from being in a shelter situation, and it takes them a while to open up. Some of them you don't see the full scope of their personality until it's been a while. And it can take up to 6 months to see this. So I've had a lot of people say that their dog, when they rescued him at first, they were really quiet and shy and well-behaved, and now they're crazy maniacs. And that's not uncommon because it's within that 6-month period where you're starting to see the true scope of their personality. So that's the first thing that you should be aware of. The next thing is, Stella, let's not get the loudest, most obnoxious squeaky toy. They were all sleeping right before I turned on the live. So the other thing you want to look at when you're dealing with potty training is that most little dogs, when you rescue them, usually aren't potty trained. Very few of them are actually truly potty trained, and I think a lot of them actually end up in rescue because they're not potty trained. And I'm not sure why so many people are okay with that. Like, my guess is that when we potty train a dog, if you have an 80-pound lab and they have an accident on the floor, our physical reaction to that is much different. So we'll be like, no, how dare you do that? That's, I don't want you to do that in the house. As opposed to if you have a Yorkie who weighs 8 pounds and they piddle and it's this big on the floor. Your physical reaction isn't quite the same. And I think that plays a big part in it as to why a lot of times little dogs aren't necessarily housebroken, or they're more difficult to housebreak. And the other piece of it is, too, a dog, when they're in an environment and they have to go to the bathroom, they're very comfortable going to the bathroom way over there, as long as they can be over here where their mess isn't. So if they're over here where their mess isn't and their mess is way over there and they could be away from it, they're perfectly okay with that. So it's a situation, WrestleMania again, it's a situation where the bigger the area that the dog has, so in other words, a small dog in any house would feel like they have a much bigger area than a big dog. So they're much more likely to go to the bathroom over there and then be okay over here because they don't have to be near it. So I think that's the other reason why little dogs are harder to housebreak, or it at least seems like it's harder for us. So you got to keep that in mind, and then no matter how old your dog is when you rescue them, if you find out that they're not housebroken, you have to go back to basics of housebreaking. So for a 3-year-old, even though they're 3, and we would think that if you're adopting a 3-year-old dog, they'd be housebroken, that's no guarantee. So you want to go back to basics, which means you want to introduce them to rooms one at a time. They shouldn't have the freedom of the entire house. Liam, can I have that, please? This is our little friend that we're playing with right now. I'm not throwing it now. We're not playing with that right now. So you want to confine them to a smaller area in the beginning. You can have them on leash. Liam, no. You can have them on leash with you in the house. I always recommend that when you're housebreaking a dog, so that they are with you and you're more aware of if they have to go to the bathroom, if all of a sudden they start turning in a circle, or they're playing around and all of a sudden they get really still and you have to look down and see what they're doing, and you see them walking in a circle or sniffing around like they have to go to the bathroom. It just makes us more aware of where the dog is and what's going on. And that way the dog can't sneak off and have an accident when you're not paying attention or you're distracted momentarily, which is usually what happens. So you want to go back to basics. The other thing I always recommend with potty training is that you should keep a potty log. So in the beginning, when you start the potty training, keep a log. And on that log, you're going to track what time of day the dog goes to the bathroom, what they do if they pee or poop, and how often they do it. Mark down their feeding times in between there. And you'll start to see after a couple of days a very consistent pattern, especially for a 3-year-old dog. And that pattern will show you how often they can hold it and when they go. Now, you can't judge, if you take your dog out every 2 or 3 hours and they go to the bathroom every time, it's hard to judge if that's really when they had to go or they're just going because you took them out, especially with boy dogs, because they have a little something extra that they'll share for, they mark their territory, so they've got a little for here and a little bit later for there, and a lot of that post over there is very important, and this bush right here is mine. So they're less likely to completely empty their bladder at once. So it's harder it's harder to housebreak a boy. But for girl dogs, they usually empty their bladder much more completely, unless your dog is a personality like Miss Stella over here, and she marks like a boy. She lifts her leg like a boy. She will back it up to a tree to mark the tree. I mean, she marks like a boy, and girl dogs will do that when they're more dominant in their personality. So you want to go back to basics, Millie, with the dog. Confine them when you're not home, and confine them to a small area. Don't leave the whole kitchen or anything like that. You want to keep them in a smaller area. If they're crate trained, put them in a crate. If not, then you can get a small exercise pen, which, the same ones that they sell for little kids, you can buy for dogs with the plastic fencing that goes in. You can put it in any shape you want, a square or a circle. Something like that works really well if they're not crate trained, to keep them confined. And that way you eliminate that reaction that they have where they can go to the bathroom way over there and then be over here and be comfortable. Because if they go to the bathroom here and they're confined here, they don't like that. So they're encouraged then to hold their bladder. So that's what I would recommend for that. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I am going to attach, after the live is over, I'll attach on this Facebook post a link for potty log that I have that you can use if that helps. If you want to download the potty log, feel free to use that as a starting point for keeping track of that. That'll really help you figure out exactly when your dog does have to go to the bathroom, and the certain times of day that, like for instance, they have to poop and that sort of thing, and how long you can go in between breaks. Now, the other part of her question was about the toys, and if you have a dog that likes to chew in the kids' toys. I did do a question similar to this back on March 28th, I believe it was, on my Facebook Live. If you want to check that out, about a dog who was chewing on things other than their own toys. And the basic idea is that you want to make sure that your dog has enough toys around so that they have something to chew on that's theirs, so that they can find their own toys. And do your best in the beginning to keep the kids' toys picked up as much as possible. I know how challenging that is, but in the beginning, try to do that. And then you also want to make sure that when your dog does grab something they're not supposed to have, don't just take that away from them and give them one of their toys. Don't just do the exchange. You need to correct your dog so they know that you're not supposed to chew on that. Then take that away from them and then give them their toy so that they are getting the idea that the toy is not, they're not supposed to chew in that toy. It's not just, hey, when I want a bone, I'll chew on this toy over here so I know you'll come and give me my bone then. It teaches them the wrong thing at that point. It's not teaching them not to chew on your child's toys. It's teaching them that you're going to interact with them if they start chewing on their child's toy. So you have to correct them when they chew on something they're not supposed to have, take that away from them, and then give them their toy to chew on instead. So I hope that helps, Millie. If you have any other questions about that, you can let me know. Let's see, what's our next question? Our next question tonight is from Jason from Laura, South Carolina. I think Jason's on right now. Hi, Jason. But let's see, he's got a rescue dog. He's a rescue cane corso. And he said that his dog is very aggressive when he's in the car, but fine once he lets him out. So he'll act like a aggressive dog when he's in the car, when the door's closed, and then when he lets the dog out, he's fine with new people. So this one is kind of a multi-step solution. So the first thing you want to know is that basically when your dog is in a car like that and they're being protective or whatever they're doing, the reason that they're doing that is usually protection. But you want to understand that there's different types of drive. Your dog is in drive. And what that means is that they are in a heightened state of stimulation, okay? So there's different types of drive. There's play drive, prey drive, and protection drive. So play drive is when you see the dogs that are absolutely obsessed with a tennis ball or a frisbee and they would play it until they fall over. They would never stop. Your arm usually tires out way before they do, and they're obsessed with it. So that's a high play drive. Prey drive is when they want to go get the squirrel, the bunny, anything that moves quickly and they want to go and get it. That's prey drive. And then protection drive is when they act like a fool because they are they feel like something's threatened. And there's different reasons for protection drive. It could be either that they're protecting you, it could be that he's protecting the car, or it could be that he's protecting himself. And that really goes more towards the dog's personality. So I would say if you have watched any of my other videos about dog personality or any of the blogs I've done on it, if your dog is on the side of the personality scale that has, that is more a natural born leader or a middle management dog, then that's usually they're protecting you or the property. If they're on the other end of the scale where they're a worker bee or they're shy or introverted, then that's usually them protecting themselves. They don't want whoever it is, the stranger, to get any closer, so they put on the big show. So you want to know that first because that will determine how you address the issue. But the other piece is that once you know that your dog is in drive, you have to start training them when they're in drive, okay? So when they're in a really heightened state of stimulation, think of a dog in drive like a kid having a temper tantrum. Reasoning with them when they're in the middle of a temper tantrum is very difficult. They're in a heightened emotional state. They're a little bit out of control. It's very difficult to have a conversation with them or reason with them in that moment. With a dog, when they're in drive, it's the same sort of thing. You need to be able to talk to them and communicate to them. When I say talk to them, obviously, I mean in their language. But when they're in that state, and the way you do that is by not starting when they're at DEFCON 10, okay? So you want to start when they get a little bit agitated, when they're at like, on a scale of 1 to 10, if they're at like 5. And then you start working with them when they're at that level of agitation or in drive, overstimulated at that level, so that they start to listen to you. It's a skill for them to be able to tune in and listen to you when they're in that state. Because any dog that's in drive gets very serious tunnel vision. They focus on what they're looking at, and it's very difficult to get their attention away from it. So you have to start to work with them and train them when they're in drive, only it needs to be a lower level stimulus. So there's a lot of different games you can do for that. One of the ones that I usually like for dogs is usually if you take a toy, you know, they have those toys now, like I think they call them skins, that look like that's kind of looks like a dead animal. They're like a rabbit or a squirrel or something like that, and they have no stuffing in them. It's just like the casing of it. Take that and tie it to the end of a long leash, and then use at the end of the leash, move it around the ground really quickly so that your dog chases it, and get it going really quickly and get your dog really like excited about it and chasing it. And then in between that, that's when you can grab the toy and ask them to sit, ask them to drop it, ask them to stay, ask them to down. Start getting them to try and do their obedience commands when they're in that overexcited state. So that's a good way to start to work with them when they're in drive, so that they start to understand that they can actually listen to you while they're in that state. And it's also, that's actually a really fun game for dogs. They love to play that one. So I would try that and see if that helps at all, Jason, because you want to work with them outside of the car first so that you can start to get them able to listen to you when he's in that heightened state of overstimulation. So I hope that helps a little bit too. So if anyone has any questions for me, make sure you send me, you can private message me your question or email it to me between now and next Thursday when we'll do our next live. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And I hope that for all the dog moms out there and human moms, that you have a great Mother's Day this weekend. And make sure you check out that potty log if you need it. I'll post it on this live video after we're done. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Make sure you keep an eye on my blog and my Facebook posts and things, where I continue to provide more information, just not necessarily always in video form. So I hope everyone has a great night. Good night.